night somewhere else. Like, welcome. This is DavKat and the Revolution. We're going to jump right in. Sorry we're late. We both had a little issue this morning, and it combined together to slow us down. But we're here, and we're happy. How are you, Dav?
Good. I'm very good. I'm excellent.
Excellent. Quick question, because we didn't even talk about what we're going to talk about, but I definitely would like to talk about the whole incident there in Atlanta at some point.
Yes.
I think we should touch on that.
That is a big thing, because you feel it when you're wanting to express happiness about anything else. Apparently, 69% of Americans want perpetrators of the riot, the Capitol attempted sacking, to be prosecuted. Yay. Mm-hmm. People are getting their stimulus checks, millions of people. Yay. But there's this background of, let's not forget about this bubbling bigotry that was purposely cultivated by Trump and his Republican cronies to pull attention away from their malevolence in relation to the COVID pandemic, their malevolent neglect of the American people. So there's that, and African American communities are feeling it because of the nature of the mass killing of 6 Asian American women in Atlanta by a man whose motivations, yes, may have been bound up in convoluted feelings of evangelical-inspired shame. We don't know, but we do know that the sheriff who came out front-facing to the public and said, he was having a bad day, that dude is very racist. And
we've heard that before, I think, in various things. Hey, look, they murdered a bunch of people, but you know what happened to them that morning? It was devastating, Yeah. We've heard that crap before.
It was a very clear example of the attempted softening and excusing of crimes by white people in order to support the protection racket of white innocence. Look, white people are getting better, some of us at least, at saying, hey, look, there's some guilt and shame, and it might not be things we did ourselves, but we're not innocent, and you don't need to go to the mat pretending that white people are always innocent. If they commit a crime, it's a bad day or a sex addiction. Nope, and nope.
That's a good one, Daily Debunker there, Teach. I'm guessing he's saying it was religious to beat the additional hate crime charges. And as a bit of an aside, it's not really an aside. This isn't an aside. The death industry in Black and brown communities in a place like Chicago, we did the math one time, back of the envelope calculation of what it's worth to police salaries, city budgets, the death industry itself, morticians, undertakers, churches, graveyards, cemeteries. Every single person or entity that touches that body after someone's been murdered in Compton or in Inglewood in Chicago or in the Bronx or in Harlem in New York, it's worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. If you stopped those killings, there would be lots of money lost. There's an incentive for those killings to continue, a monetary incentive, and nobody thinks about it that way. So, yeah, that's where we are in America. What a beautiful place.
Debunker made a comment that perhaps that whole sex addiction angle was being pushed to avoid hate crime charges, which are longer jail sentences if you're found to have committed a hate crime. But other people have pointed out that directing violence towards people specifically because they're women also constitutes a hate crime. So it might be even more than avoiding hate crime. It might be avoiding besmirching the hallowed name of conservative Christianity or evangelical Christianity and Trump associated sentiments to try and pretend that they're not racist. So even though it probably won't get him out of a hate crime judgment, because you can kill 7 women and 1 man and be found guilty of a hate crime. But yes, I guess it's getting rid of one element of the accusation of a hate crime to try and pretend that you just happened to drive to 3 Asian-owned and operated businesses, driving around all of the other sex industries in that area. Try and pretend it had nothing to do with the fact that was people of Asian background, and that you clearly felt that those people were expendable in your goal to do good, do what you thought was good, either by removing temptation from yourself as a potential sex addict, or just also as someone who was a delegated terrorist under Trump's delegated terrorism model, who fought Trump's enemies for him. And Trump's always stigmatized Asian people as the enemies very exploitatively to redirect conservative attention away from his own misguided actions.
Daily Debunker. I mean, I imagine we're looking at life either way, but it's a discussion for deterrence.
Deterrence against hate crimes, or yeah.
I'm not.
Do you want to
100%.
unpack that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, unpack it just a little bit. Yeah, he totally targeted only businesses that were clearly billed as Asians. And I mean, for all we know, he's been to those businesses, right? I mean, it wasn't that he was unfamiliar with them even. He may
Yes,
well
I
have been
would like
familiar.
to point out that the ages that have been released to the public now of the women who have died were in their 50s and 70s. So even though there was clearly a narrative being pushed on the public to try and not care as much about the women, because implying that they were prostitutes, it seems unlikely. I mean,
Well,
they were older women.
And you're in this is another thing that I don't think most Americans know about Chinese people specifically, is that when you go to a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown in Chicago and their waitress, for example, or the busboy or the cook, I mean, they barely speak English. They're fresh off the plane, let's say, to America. They are like 99% likely to be indentured servants. So in China, where they are from, they pay someone to bring them to an America, give them a job, and give them a shot at a better life. So a lot of those people in these massage parlors and stuff that we see, they've got to pay off that debt, 40, 50, 60, $70,000. That means they have to work for free in horrible conditions, probably living in a roach infested restaurant, or a room in the restaurant, or some crappy quarters somewhere, and for years. And if they skip out, if they leave and go somewhere else, guess who gets punished? Their family back home. So that's another thing that we don't talk about in this country, is the fact that in those communities, there's a system of oppression. So it's a horrible
So there's a
situation in this
pattern of
country.
indentured servitude, you're saying, that
Yes. Oh
a
yeah.
lot of people
Yeah.
subscribe to, and it's a model of slavery, even though it's
It
not
is.
pure chattel slavery that we're used to talking about with relation to Black Americans brought over to be owned body and soul. Well, not soul, haha,
Well, yeah.
but
I mean, I suppose if you could get some tangibility on that, they'd put it on Wall Street, and it would be a commodity. The soul, get your souls for a certain price today. And I know that, again, that's a little sideways to what we're talking about. But the point is, to me, is immigration in this country, our acceptance or lack of acceptance of people that look different than us, and the fact that your effing amygdala is swollen and you can't handle somebody that's different than you. You can't handle things like that. It's a problem. It's what allows a lot of this nonsense to happen. And it's actually called evolving past your evolutionary state. It's saying, I'm no longer a knuckle dragon idiot. I've got a brain. I can use it, and I'm going to go beyond stereotyping. I'm going to go beyond implicit bias. So there's my preaching.
Thanks, Rev. Daily Debunker clarified for us and said it might not matter to the criminal, Robert Aaron Young, if he gets 150 years versus 100, but how we treat this will speak to potential copycats. Yes, I guess that is very important.
To think that, Daily Debunker, I think it's the same thing with the argument for the death penalty. If I'm going to kill somebody, I'm going to kill them. Doesn't matter what the punishment is. I mean, if I'm going to kill somebody, I'm going to kill them. I doubt there are too many murderers that sit there and go, oh, I'm going to get 75 years versus 50, or I'm going to get the electric chair versus whatever, because maybe the upset dude at home that, is going to beat his wife to death in a fit of, rage. Okay, maybe he's like, oh, I don't want to get the electric chair. Maybe he'll stop, but I don't think so. I don't know that has any effect. I don't know what the statistics are.
I wonder if it's actually an incentive, that the fact that the death penalty exists in America is maybe like a way that people, that form of suicide of going, well, I don't care anymore. I want to die. So I'm just going to commit crimes so extreme that they'll have to kill me. And that's how people who are operating in an extremely dysfunctional mental state might actually, on some level, think.
Yeah, for sure. I like this. This incident could bring much greater scrutiny to trafficking, sex work, labor violations, etc. These shops are everywhere. Agreed, 100%. Hey, Doe, what's up, Doe? Wow, I've seen you a lot today. Doe, do you know, I have so many BFFs now on this platform. Doe's a BFF, and DavKat's a BFF. Doe, Dav, Doe. Say hello.
Bob is noting that there's somebody on TikTok claiming that two of the women had the same name, and a woman from China is saying that their name was a term for little chicken, which in turn means prostitute. So that leads me to circle back to something I forgot to say earlier, which is even if the women were prostitutes, we shouldn't allow that to dehumanize them.
What does that have to do with getting killed?
Yeah.
Well,
some people care less when they find
bald, middle-aged white guy. What does that have to do with if you decide, my job is to pick up trash? What does that have to do with killing me? It's crazy. Prostitutes.
It doesn't have anything to do with whether or not people kill you.
Yeah, sex work it's real work, folks. It's not. Let's get past that bullshit right there.
Yeah. So. Some people organize their pain into compartments, and they say, if I can relate to a victim, then I will care more. And to a degree, we all do that. We have circles of care. There are things we reserve our deepest responses for. But as you say, it's part of our cultural evolution now. We're better people when we can expand those circles of care so that we more perfectly understand that when it affects one, it affects us all, and that relegating other people to outside circles of concern because you can't relate as well to them, whether it be because you can't relate to their profession, or you can't relate to their skin color, or you just have some other excuse for not caring about something, you're not really saving yourself energy. What you're doing is blinding yourself to danger. Because threats from white supremacists, when untended to, amplify and ball up like a snowball until more people die. And I think the death total from COVID is an example of an amplifying threat that got out of hand because people underestimated what a threat Trump was, because he only seemed to be targeting Mexicans initially. And so there were those of us saying, no, you don't want a fascist who gets political power from targeting certain groups that you don't care about as much because they're undocumented migrants or they're Mexican. When you let somebody who draws power from hatred like that and contempt and disdain get into power, he will just create more contempt and disdain until people hate each other so much that they don't care when thousands upon thousands of people are dying. And they'll still be there making their excuses and saying, my freedom, I don't have to wear a mask, I don't care how many people die, it's all made up. Death snowballs. under autocrats.
Frank, Dav 2024. I like it. Might be problematic. Um, I don't think you were born in the United States,
I
Dav,
was
would
not.
be my
I was
guess.
not.
So, unless you're Ted Cruz and somehow magically going to be president of the United States, because you weren't born in America either, this bullshit excuse that, well, his parents were ambassadors and I don't actually think they were technically even working for the U.S. at the time he was born. So it's BS that Ted Cruz could be president. Hello from Maryville, Bernadette. But I want to say all of that we just talked about and trying to unpack and wrap around. Um, at the end of the day, there are what, 6 women that
7 women, 6 Asian women, but 7 women
okay.
altogether. One woman was a white American woman who, with her husband, had gone to a day spa as a couple's date. They have an 8-month-old child and a 14-year-old child. So they were married recently, and yeah, it was like their first date night. And
Hmm.
just as somebody who's really struggled to get out of the house when I had newborn children, I'm like, ow. So that's a story that resonates with me because
Mm-hmm.
of relatability, and it's a human tendency that I won't fight to say yes. I have an extra pang for somebody killed on a date night who has a newborn, an 8-month-old baby. But yes, I also grieve for the women who were just working and just trying to live their lives and did not deserve to be slaughtered by an entitled young white man tormented by his own demons and taught to view other subsets of the society in which he lived as somehow lesser than him, as expendable in his goal of exterminating demons, his own demons, because apparently, according to him, whether or not it's true or whether or not he's just looking to try and hide his racism, that he wanted to eliminate the temptation from of women because he had a sex addiction.
um, yeah, it's arguably 3 million years since we went from this stage of proto humanity to humanity. You'd think we'd fucking figure this shit out in 3 million years, not to kill each other. Um, our base instincts, they can't drive us anymore. Not if we're going to go to whatever the next level is.
This is why Jewish people always say eternal vigilance is required, because they understand that it's part of humanity that we can't just excise from our nature. We use it and we find it to be necessary. We assume it's necessary because we assume that at some points we're going to have to turn to our base instincts to defend ourselves. That when you send soldiers to fight in war, they have to abandon all of their socialized training to not kill and to not harm others. That there are moments when human aggression and tribalism will lead some people to attack others, and that you have to still have an attachment to your base impulses so that you can marshal up an army to repel invaders and colonizers. And so people will never fully turn their backs on those negative attributes. It's more you have to just maintain awareness of them and how easily they can get out of hand and be abused just for one person's gain. So
Well,
anybody who wants to obtain power on the back of humanity's more aggressive nihilistic qualities, we are ripe for the plucking, and we must always remember that.
well, I'm just thinking like, can't we just breed these assholes out of humanity? Can we just decide to have sex with only nice people or something, for God's sakes? I know that sounds silly, but um, you know, it's just look,
We
it's
are
a
the
fact.
assholes as
It's a
well.
fact that conservatives have a different brain. And I know it starts to sound like eugenics and all this scary stuff, but like there's a problem with the conservative mind. There is. It's obvious. We almost fell into fascism. 500,000 people have needlessly died because there's a difference. Um, it's not just. I know Dav's not happy with me here, but I'm walking this through.
I'm not
this
unhappy.
is there's
I'm formulating my disagreement.
well, yeah, formulate your disagreement, but I mean, this is not an unknown fact. This is documented. There are scientific papers on this that this difference. I'm not saying it's a dysfunction. I'm not saying it's better or worse. This difference drives certain people to be scared, to be unaccepting of differences, to now this is me talking, not those things. To hoard guns, to do the stupid things that they do, and you know at what point do you say that that's not acceptable anymore? Not to the point where what? You drag them out of the house yourself? I'm not saying that, but we need to talk about it. It is a slippery slope, though. We need to talk about it. We need to understand that these folks need a different way of education. These folks need to understand things on a level that we understand innately, or we understand because we want to. But our whole education system is wrong. We've got to compensate for 70 million Americans who were willing to destroy the country for their base instincts, for their desires to be perceived to be better. And I'm going to stop.
uh, yeah, I wasn't mad at you for
No, okay.
for
I
postulating
could
that.
just see you like your
You
brain
could
was
see my
turning.
face going, "Oh, I disagree." But those were the cogs in my brain turning to say, I'm more of a neuroplasticity model than you, so I don't say those people are these way. I think there are certain
I
people
know
who,
those people are this way. It's a horrible thing to say, but
who are marinated in various ideas. So I associate those brain conditions, the enlarged amygdala, the additional fear levels. It's a product of various environmental factors. It's not as if they're born that way. When you're born into an environment like that, you're likely to share those characteristics of wanting to hoard guns and to derive a sense of superiority in relation to other people, and to have a simple explanation for life that involves good guys, bad guys. But I've met people who have managed to drag their conscious selves out of that mindset.
mm-hmm.
So I've interviewed someone who's brought up house only watched Fox, regular church attendees, and he was taught to really hate and fear Democrats. And he went to college really armed with this whole don't listen to them, and the women will be temptresses, and they will try and suck me into their baby killing excuses. And he said women were really patient with him, and he counts them as his saviors for really helping explain things to them and explaining their background with being sexually assaulted, or and just explaining and humanizing gay people to him as well. All of this work that he also had to do himself. And he now feels relatively free. Like it's first they helped him make the decision to change, and then there was all the work of actually changing as well. So I see it as fluid, which means we can't just condemn certain demographics. We have to mobilize people around our ideas and show how our ideas are better, and that we still address the concerns of Republicans and conservative leaning people, that we're still interested in the safety of America at a global level, and we're still interested in the prosperity of America. We just have different ways of achieving that, and that a lot of the other ways proposed by Republican politicians are actually fake ways that act as cover stories while they hand out your money to wealthy people.
I know I would just slip back to the neuroplasticity thing. I know it's a slippery slope, but genetic memory, it's not like there's a videotape spinning in there telling you, what your forebears did. But I mean, we're starting to understand things about the brain that are, some of this stuff is, getting carried over. So just say that, it's purely nature, or it's purely nurturing, it's purely lack of nurturing, lack of empathy. I mean, I think all that thing maybe, again, I just think it's it's a hard road to go down. But I mean, I've read the science, you know what I mean? Like, you know, there are differences, and we have to address those differences wherever they come from, in terms of I personally don't think or really want to waste any effort on the 70 million, 72 million people that voted for Trump the second time. I don't want to spend a dollar on them, but I'll spend hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, millions of dollars on their kids and their kids that, you might have a chance with a 5-year-old from a hillbilly fucking racist to get them, to, to, to have a different understanding. But I don't give a damn about the person who voted for Trump. I can't. They wanted to destroy the country. They wanted to destroy the country.
Yeah.
And that just can't be acceptable. It can't.
Well, 69% of Americans support prosecuting the people who overran the Capitol. So that must include at least some Republicans. Although what portion of the electorate do
Only about
Republicans
30%.
30%.
It doesn't. It actually doesn't. Now,
Doesn't have to.
Republican, yes, but Trump voters, no. That's actually everybody but a Trump voter. And again, I know I've got a lot of anger in there. And yeah, I probably would be willing to set up, I've heard people say it, re-education camps, right? That's what they say when I start talking about educating people, educating people in a way that will bring them around to sanity. I'm not saying they're re-education camps. I'm saying what needs to be done is on a massive scale. We can't let 70 plus million people run around and do this to us again in 3 years. It
Well,
can't
they were
happen.
able to do it because they had power. So really, the key to not letting them do it again is to support Stacey Abrams, support community organizers who help mobilize Democrats to vote.
Yeah, but when you have a
And
system, Dab, that is inherently flawed, when you have 2 senators for North Dakota when they should share one with Idaho, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas that don't have as many people in them as I do in my freaking backyard in Chicago, all right? The system is set
I
up for
hear you.
minority rule, and
I
the
know it's
system
weighted
needs
to
to
minority
change.
rule. Yes,
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
that's a problem.
I agree, but if we support Democrats to end the filibuster and to have Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. given
Right, but find a
status,
Democrat who's got the cojones to do it.
they might.
Democrats
Biden is
traditionally
talking.
have no like inner strength, no fortitude, no ability to stand up against anything. That's the Democratic Party that
But
I
that's been
know in my lifetime.
I'm sure, but that's been a reflection of um, the voting population still viewed in context of the weighting that your election system gives white voters. So white voters have disproportionate political power, not just because of their numbers, but because of the way elections are organized in the United States for this self-perpetuating minority rule situation. So Democrats have just acted in concert with the political dynamics of the eras that you've lived through. Whereas now, Rev, those political dynamics are changing because a lot of
Chuck
people have
Schumer,
seen what Republicans did when they had power. Chuck
Nancy
Schumer's
Pelosi
out
and
there
Chuck Schumer
advocating
have they
for
they
Joe
haven't
Biden to
changed.
end student debt.
They're still
Rubbish,
corporate Democrats that
rubbish, 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 rubbish.
no.
Chuck
No.
Schumer is still a political animal. Have you not noticed, Rev? You've missed the news headlines. He's been out there advocating for Joe Biden to find a way to exercise his power as president and get rid of $50,000 of student debt for people who have student debt. Is that in line with what you know and expect from Chuck Schumer? Or can
No,
you concede
and I've
that
heard that, and that's some growth, but you still got Joe Biden who's like rejecting it. So, I mean, just because one guy is out there maybe trying to get reelected again, I'm just saying they're politicians. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the politicians, they're not
he
rusted on
sees
in any.
he sees AOC slipping up behind him, to knock him out of power when he should have sat his ass down a long time ago. Oh, ageism now. Now it's ageism because Schumer needs to move on, right? I mean, it's just a really horrible system of governance that should be burned to the ground. Who keeps a constitution for 250 years based on slavery, based on white men being in power? You cannot amend evil out of a document. I don't care how you amend it. You cannot amend evil out of a constitution. You have to start again.
Why don't you go and research what happened with the French Revolution when they tried to say things are wrong, let's reform it in versions of ideals by burning the system to the ground.
Well,
They just got stuck in a
I,
system of perpetual burning and reburning new series of leaders.
yeah, but
So it's
what's the difference,
nihilistic
Dab?
approaches like yours.
What's the difference between burning and reburning and keeping white people in power for 400 years, and it's not going to change. This isn't going to change, not for generations at this rate. It's
What are you
not.
talking about? What are you talking about? We have a female vice president who's black and
Well,
Asian
let's look at
American.
South Africa. Let's look at South Africa. So the South Africans gave up what? They gave up power. They didn't give up their wealth. They gave up power. Guess who are the most powerful people in South Africa right now? White people with power in money. Political power means nothing if you do not have total power. If they had done it right in South Africa, they'd have booted them out, taken their money, and then they would have all the power. But you can't do that, right? Oh, you don't do that to people. Again, all these things I'm not saying that we do, but
Do you
we're
think you're going
fooling
to convert
ourselves.
me to revolution? Is that why this is your name? Because you actually think you can convert people to
No,
to
what
accept that burning everything to the ground is a good idea? Because you got to start from scratch. It's pure. It's clean. Burn the money. Burn the privilege. Like what?
burn
What are you?
capitalism. I'm anti-capitalism, Dav. Remember that.
Yeah.
Capitalism based on what? Feudalism. Feudalism is what? A groovy system for a few people. So is capitalism. It's a groovy system for a few people. That's what it is. Not a good
There's
system.
various manifestations of capitalism all over the world. In some places, it's better regulated. In other places, it's quite poorly regulated. And I think the minoritarian rule in the United States has ensured that regulations
Where does it
haven't
work?
served people.
Where does capitalism work in the
There's
world?
lots of places where capitalism works.
Where?
Aren't you like those tech billionaires who would aspire to buying a whole bunch of land in New Zealand so you can settle there where in the world would you ideally want to live if you could move your family to the safest place in the world? Do you think New Zealand is a communist paradise? It's not a utopia, and nowhere in the world
No,
is a
wait a
utopia.
minute, wait a
But
minute, wait a
it's
minute.
capitalism.
I'm not advocating communists like you're talking about in the Soviet system, or yeah, like if I could move my family anywhere, it probably would be, except it's damn cold, but somewhere up north there where they do socialism way better than anybody else does it.
They don't do socialism. They
Well,
do
it's a bunch of white people. I
they
get it.
do regulated capitalism, and it's
Yeah,
and with
but
appropriate socialist safety nets. So they're
right,
fairly
but
high tax countries, but that's still capitalism, Rev.
yeah, but where even in Sweden, like it's very xenophobic, right? There's not a lot of foreigners that come there. Japan, xenophobic, not a lot of foreigners that are allowed acceptance there. New Zealand, very xenophobic, not a lot of acceptance of their own people there. There's no place where they're getting this right, and capitalism is the engine that is driving the chaos and the madness. You know what I mean? Like I don't get people that are pro-capitalist. What good does it do anybody? It's not. When 70%, when 80% of your people are impoverished, like in this country, how is capitalism working? How's it working?
So you're not a communist,
I'm
you're
not a
saying.
communist.
You just
No.
want to replace communism. You want to replace
No, you know what I
capitalism
want?
with
It's you take
communism.
the $21 trillion gross domestic product, you divide it by however many working age people there are in the country. That's what you get paid.
And
And
how do you
that would
generate?
that would
What
stifle
system are
that
you
would
using
stifle.
to generate a gross domestic product? What system of governance and business
Well,
operation are
the
you using?
look, there's plenty of ways to incentivize people to work. Billionaires clearly work their ass off when they don't need the money. So you could, I think, transform a society to be empathetic and equitable. I don't know if you're the CEO of the corporation then you still get 6 weeks of vacation like everybody else, but maybe you get a bigger condo while you're on vacation. Maybe you get, certain perks, but there's no reason why Elon Musk should have the money he has.
So
None.
when
There's
you
no reason
say
why any
in
American
your
should go
ideal that you're
hungry.
describing, in
Hmm.
your ideal that you're describing, where a CEO could just work for a reward, you're still referencing CEOs, you're still referencing
No, no, no,
capitalism.
no. I wouldn't have CEOs or anything anymore. People would be like, well, how would you have creativity? Humans are innately creative. You don't have to have a monetary system for anything. You don't have to have a monetary system to for anything. We don't need money. We have a system that's based on greed, it's based on power, and it's based on destruction, it's based on oppression, it's based on misogyny, it's based on racism. It's not based, there's nothing good that is capitalism is based on. Capitalism thrives in a fascist country. Do you know how capitalism can work so well in China and can continue to work well in China? Because take a pharmaceutical company like Eli Lilly and they go to China, and in America they bring out a drug and they test it for 10 years. Lots of people start dying. They're like, "Oh, got to take that off the market." Too many deaths. But in China, guess what? You got 1.5 billion people. It kills 500,000 people a year. But we're making money left and right. You keep it on the market. Okay? Capitalism thrives under fascism. It will thrive under fascism in China, and it's doing it.
Wouldn't you say that China still has a very strong organizing principle of autocracy that was born from their communist rule that extended for a number of years?
Yeah, but they're doing
Wouldn't you say
really
more
well
that
with
they've got some
capitalism over there.
capitalist additions to their essentially communist
And I'm saying
authoritarian
it will
rule of
continue
government?
to thrive when American corporations, which they're already doing, are leaving this country and going to the next market, China, and bringing them with them their capitalistic tendencies that will have some degree of freedom with them, right? I mean, this is the whole thing with Hong Kong, right? I mean, listen to Almond Lee on this platform and ask her if she's scared. Um, she's
Yeah, but
scared. People in Hong
you,
Kong are
yeah,
scared.
because
Um,
China is a communist, authoritarian,
it's evil.
capitalistic government.
It's
Yes,
evil.
and having said that, I would also like to say, let's not encourage anybody. I know you're not doing this, but I want to preface all my criticisms of the Chinese government now with
It's
a
not
warning
being
to
the people.
everybody not to direct any hostility towards Asian people
But I
just
hope I
because of
haven't because
Trump
I'm
actions.
not. You
No,
know.
no. I think what we're doing is very different. I think you can be critical of the Chinese government, but Trump didn't call COVID the Chinese government flu. He called it the Chinese flu because he was hoping to marshal the bigoted energies of his base, knowing that it was just bubbling beneath the surface and they just were happy to have some new candidates to hate because that's what that style of fascistic government does. It tries to appeal to emotion. But
Hey, let's go to
I
the comments
think,
for a second. But go ahead and
yeah,
talk, and then we'll go to the comments. Because
yeah.
Sheldon apparently thinks I'm Jim Jones. Um, and let's see.
There was a little bit of a burn it all to the ground vibe in the conversation a
No,
little bit
there is a
earlier.
burn it all to the ground vibe.
Yeah.
There is a burn it all to the ground vibe. You know,
This is my eye roll that I reserve for nihilistic tendencies in conversation.
look, what are you gonna do? We're gonna keep playing this game because the power is gonna stay with white people for generations. It's not going away. The power is not going away because the power's in the money. He seeks a utopian society. Oh my God! Holy cow, Sheldon. How horrible would that be? A utopian society. Holy
Because
cow.
utopian people who chase utopia often tend to be very naive, misguided people who bring death in their wake.
Um, the
And I'm just pointing you to the mass murder totals of communist societies.
of Russia, yeah, but they were
Russia,
driving
China.
towards a utopian society. DevCat, they were about power. They weren't about communism.
Yeah,
They were
because
assholes that were
you
about
get
power.
power. You get power when you bring people along behind you to a degree. And communists are able to bring people along behind them who are seduced by the utopian
They were
idealist logic.
narcissistic madmen. That's what they
Yeah.
were.
But the first thing that they did was sell utopian ideals to a population and decry the evils of capitalism. So there's a very well-worn path
So
from
decrying the evils of
this.
capitalism is going to lead us to death and destruction. When I'm saying burn it down to the ground, I'm not talking about going out there and burning the buildings down. I'm talking about building the systems of power that are evil.
I know,
That's
but
what I'm talking about destroying.
you talk about that, but it is a pattern of rhetoric that many people who have studied history will rightly associate with the type of leaders who have gotten into power, who have
So are we
attracted
supposed
power
to
to themselves.
gingerly just wait a
Yeah,
thousand years for
it's
this to
called, it's
work
not called
out?
waiting, it's called um, social change. It's called,
So all those starving people in America right now, which there are a lot of, they just get to starve for a couple of more generations because
well,
what? We have to do.
actually, Biden's cutting child poverty in half at the moment with the various packages contained in the stimulus bill. So it's overly cynical to say nothing changes. It's overly cynical to say that poverty will always remain the same. Having a Democratic government rather than a Republican government will do a lot to
Joe
address
Biden is
poverty in
not
the
a
United States.
panacea. Joe Biden is a centrist Democrat who is leaning to the left because he's forced to. You know,
Are
that's
you
the only
saying
reason
it's
he's
not
leaning to the
really
left.
saying the improvements to America that will occur because of the $1.9 trillion package to
Mhm.
help, that's primarily targeted towards people in America who need help?
Wait. I no. 1.9 trillion is not going towards helping America. I don't know what percentage of that bill is because I haven't dug through it, but there is a lot of money there that is not going directly to help anybody.
It's going
It's
to help states with vaccination programs. It's going to help schools prepare for
I get
reopening.
that. I get that,
It's weighted towards the
but I
low
bet there's a
income
lot of pork
20%.
in there that has nothing to do with COVID, that has nothing to do with
Republicans
recovering
call it
governments.
pork, but as someone on the left, you should know better. It's
What's
not
that?
pork. There are programs to help people. And this is the most revolutionary thing that's happened in American politics for a while, that this package is delivering aid to people because the crises have enabled a seismic change in American support. So they're no longer just saying, oh, it's a bad idea to help people because that'll make people dependent on help, which is part of
Who says
American conservative thinking.
who oh
This is a
yeah.
package that goes to help people, and social permission for that has been given by the American public, a majority of the American public, because people can see how hard this crisis has hit people of low incomes, that the victims, the fallout of the crisis have not been evenly distributed across America. So for the first time in
Yeah, to
American
say the
history for a
least,
while,
I mean, black people in this country have been triply screwed by this crisis. And, shocker, I bet they're the last to recover. I bet they're the last to get everything they need. Just a guess. You know, it's just a guess because they're still going to be living in horrible, impoverished communities. Um, and I guess they're expected to wait a generation or two for that to go away when we could redirect our money and the way that we spend money and our economy to say, okay, everybody, you know what, how you end homelessness? It's easy. I could do it in 6 months. Give me enough money to build enough houses for everybody. It's called political will. It's called being decent human beings. So, Sheldon, if you want utopia, being that we build houses for everybody so they have a roof over their head, okay, you know what? I'm evil. All right. I'm an evil utopian.
Rev, you don't need to be adversarial about it because you can include a lot of building houses for people within a regulated democratic system.
When do we
Uh,
do it? When does it start?
Everything is starting because political will in America changes, but you have to have the patience to
Corporate
address
will
problems.
doesn't. Corporate will rules. I don't see anybody building houses in this $1.9
Sean, we don't
trillion
get
dollar
anything.
package.
We're not getting anything us on the bottom. There's nothing. I'm
Yeah.
on the bottom. We're not being helped at all.
None. Where's the yeah? And there are people at the bottom that are not getting nothing. Are getting nothing. Sheldon, do you heard? Like, I'm mad. I'm upset. Like, am I talking in metaphor? Hell yes. I'm not talking about going and flaming stuff down. I'm talking about burning the systems of power that are keeping people down. That's what I'm talking about. My gosh, you know, yes, it's rhetoric. I'm pissed because you solve homelessness. If you have
We,
500,000 homeless people in America, you make 500,000 homes. Some of them
they're
won't
already there.
go into
They're
their homes.
already there.
Well, you're right. There's plenty of empty homes, foreclosed and stuff. We could put everybody in a
There's
home.
3
It's called
homes for
political
every
will.
one
It's called
homeless
being
person.
decent human
I have no way to
beings. And capitalism is what prevents that. Because wait, we can't give Rev a home. He's a drug addict.
They're
Oh my
empty.
gosh. But you know how you get Rev off drugs?
Treatment.
You give him a home, you give him stability, and then you help him kick the habit. But to make somebody have to kick the habit, and I was not a drug addict when I was homeless, to make somebody force them to kick the habit before they can get help is crap. And that's the crap of this country. You want to end this stuff, you end it. You make it happen. You turn Joe Biden to Elon Musk and you say, I'm taking 98% of your wealth, like they did 100 years ago, and you'll be happy with that 2%, like they were, and they still built empires. All right. So you take 75% of his wealth and you give it back to the people. He'll be happy with 25% of nearly $1 trillion or $500 billion or $250 billion of whatever he has. Roll your eyes all you want. It's called being human and decent. That's how we do these changes, not capitalism and profit.
There's a wealth tax proposed by various people.
Tiny.
And Biden's proposed a wealth tax as well.
It's tiny. It's like
you're paying
pennies.
lip service to the words political will, but I don't think you're paying much attention to political will at all.
How am I not paying attention to political will?
Well, you haven't noticed that there has been a sea change in political will in America. That Americans were all there's been a sea change in community sentiment. The fact that 70% at least of Americans were supporting the current relief package, and even when people polling the American public increased it in by billions of dollars, people were still like, no, we think that relief is needed. We think any relief package, like the bigger the better.
1.9 trillion isn't enough.
And that was very different to the political will environment in 2008, when there was less support from the public. People having lived through that now understand that the bigger the relief package, the better the recovery. So
the relief package needs to be
throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I'm sure that's very emotionally gratifying to you, but it's not pragmatic, and it
5 to 6 to 7 to 8 billion is what that money needs to be, not 1.9 trillion. You know how many trillions of dollars we've given to corporations during this time? Trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions.
Yeah, I'm sure the air is very rarefied at the top of that soapbox you have, but you don't seem to have your feet anchored in the reality of the systems through which legislation needs to be passed in order to affect outcomes, in order to actually
deliver how all of it works. I'm talking about being decent human beings.
Why are you ignoring it though? Yeah, there's a lot of decency in America, and it needs to be harnessed by careful conversations and not by proposing that the entire system of capitalism be thrown out the window.
Why can't I do that?
Do you know what happens to political will when you tell people that the system that sustains them, no matter how much you condemn their current method of living, when you tell a nation of people that the system that currently sustains them can't be tweaked or improved, but has to be thrown wholesale out the window in exchange for a system which you propose in a fairly nebulous manner, and you can't point to anywhere where you think this has been achieved successfully. And that's what you want to do. You will find it very difficult to build political will, and that is a problem very endemic to people on the far left.
So marginalized people are just supposed to wait.
No, they're not waiting at all. There's change.
They're not? They're living in horrible, decrepit conditions that we could fix in a matter of months.
Who, when you
if
say
we
we,
decided to give
what political will are you talking about? How are you building political will? How are you converting people? How are you persuading anyone when your language is revolutionary and talks about throwing out the system of capitalism? How are you possibly seeking to build an effective coalition?
consensus amongst wealthy white people to change, to be better? Yeah, I don't care about that. I don't care about consensus among wealthy white people. They
Yeah, and
need
that
to
makes
no
you sound
longer be
like a violent
wealthy.
person, and who people won't endorse and who people won't get behind, because you don't talk about building a coalition of people united in mutual understanding. You don't talk about persuasion or convincing anybody. You talk about overthrowing, and you talk about demolishing, and those are not
Well,
persuasive,
I will
reassuring terms.
venture to guess that there are a lot of people in marginalized communities that feel very much the same way I do, who may not have a meal tonight, who may not be able to pay their utility bills, who may get kicked out on the street, who would agree much more with me than they would with what you're saying. I get what
Yeah.
you're
You're going to
saying.
lead a revolution of hungry, marginalized people who
No,
don't
I'm not trying to lead
see any
anybody's
help from
revolution,
the
Deb.
federal
I'm not trying
government.
to lead anybody's revolution. I am trying to point out that in this country, greed drives everything.
You're a freaking windbag who's pontificating without solutions.
Now, I am not here. Am I here to solve it? Do I have the answers? I'm pointing out that white people control the power and the wealth in this country. They shit on black and brown people every day to maintain that power. Take everything else back that I said. White people control all the money. They shit on everybody else. You guys can fix it. I won't preach about anything. Those are the facts.
What are the facts?
White people hold the power. They hold the money.
And
They
what do you
want to
want to?
keep it.
What do you want to do?
What do I want to do? No, it doesn't matter what I want to do.
No,
I don't.
you've got some wishes. What are they? What do you want to do?
What are my wishes? That people in marginalized communities and white people work really hard, especially white people, because it's not black people or brown people's responsibility to teach us that we are almost inherently racist as a culture. We're almost inherently racist as a culture. Being white in a room full of black people, that becomes almost a threat. All right, to those folks. So being white is not a virtue. Being white is called oppression. Being white is called white privilege. The biggest abusers of white privilege and structural racism are liberals in big cities. Liberals in big cities drive structural racism. It is not a bunch of Republican flag waving Confederates that drive racism in this country. It's structural racism driven by wealthy white society.
So not Republicans and voter suppression.
You know the
Not
difference between racism from a hillbilly Klansman and racism from Rev. We are trying to change all this, and racism that oppresses people as a group in mass by creating policies that keep them down. Those policies are coming from white governments in liberal areas.
No, but you're not distinguishing between Republicans or Democrats at this point. You're just saying white, like that's membership in a
Yes.
class. Whereas there are two
there's no
different
conservative or
policy directions.
Republican when it comes to oppression.
There is no amorphous blob of white policy. There is
no
policy.
conservative or Republican when it comes to racism, white racism, and oppression. Amen. 100%. It's just on white people.
No, I think to say that you are, and I'm not.
You don't understand America, Deb, if you do not understand structural racism and its relationship to liberals and black and brown people. This is not Europe. This is not somewhere else. This is not Australia. in the United States, structural racism is the key.
No.
The racism
I
people
do
think
there's very
about, the racism of the hillbilly, of the Klans member, that's not the same thing.
Yes, I agree with you that racism is not isolated to the South. It is not isolated to states where there's a lot of association between the Confederacy and the KKK. There is a lot of pervasive racism in more northern states as well. But for you to say that there is no distinguishing between Democratic policy and Republican policy is to absolve Republicans of all of the very specific policies that have been adopted to oppress Black Americans and to contain their political power. And
what you're doing, though, is you're letting the Democrats off the hook for the structural racism that has kept people down for 400 years, that they are a part of.
Look, 400 years is a very blobby way to talk about history.
Wow!
I mean,
Wait!
The parties switched after the Civil Rights Act.
No, seriously, no. You say that to somebody in Black Lives Matter that 400 years doesn't matter. Say that to them and watch what happens.
I'm Rev. I'm saying the history of the last 400 years is not discretely Republicans and Democrats. There has been a shift in power as to who allied themselves more with Black interests after the Civil Rights Act.
Thanks, Frank. The Civil Rights Act, come on. Like, please. No.
Yes, after the Civil Rights Act, Republicans consolidated their desire to appeal to
you're just falling for the trap that they want you to fall for, which is to divide you between the conservatives and the Democrats. The problem isn't conservatives and Democrats. The problem is white people. We are the oppressor. We are the oppressive group. Oh, I don't run around and have Black people as chattel slaves, so I must not be a part of the problem, okay? It is white culture, white society, white supremacy, and every white liberal who gets it, gets all in a bunch because what, you're calling me racist? Yeah, you're white. You are the problem. You are the people that oppress the non-white people. I don't care if you're conservative or you're a Democrat. That is the problem. That's, in a nutshell, that's the problem.
Phil makes an interesting point that, look, the white demographic in America will be a minority demographic. There will be a majority.
But the money won't.
Minority by 2045.
The money won't.
No, which is why we're seeing a heavy-duty last gasp power grab, fascism push by white billionaires, with money, who've attempted to cement Republican advantage in the electoral system. Yeah.
Well, I mean, seriously, like, don't anybody out there that if you think you can dismiss the oppression of white people as something Republicans do, I mean, like, you're not going to foster any movement among anybody but a bunch of liberal white people who don't think they're the problem.
So going back to my point about the Civil Rights Act and how there was a flip in loyalties from racist away from supporting the Dixiecrats towards supporting Republicans. People who have a more of an Old Testament framing of morality and literally feared that if Black people were allowed to vote and had appropriate proportionate access to power, that they would somehow flip the tables on white people and be able to enslave the white population in a reversal of the original chattel slavery model, that those people gravitated towards Republicans and that Nixon cultivated them, that Reagan amplified wealth gaps between.
Oh, so you're falling again for this notion of it being about conservatives and Republicans. It's not. Structural racism, a system in which public policies, institutional practices, cultural representations, and other norms in various, often reinforcing ways perpetuate racial group inequity. It it identifies dimensions of our history and culture that have allowed privileges associated with whiteness and disadvantages associated with color to endure and adapt over time. Structural racism is not something that a few people or institutions choose to practice. Instead, it's been a feature of the social, economic, and political systems in which we all exist. That's the problem. A fucking hillbilly
It's
with
something-
his with his flag, that's not the problem. We can solve that problem with education. We can solve that problem with compassion. This structural racism is put in place because of things like capitalism. That right there, that statement I read, that's why black communities are under our thumb. That's why brown communities are marginalized. That statement right there.
Yeah. That was a myth that lady in the park, Amy Cooper, who called the police, that she was a Democrat who voted for Obama. People found someone in the voting records with her name, but it hasn't actually been officially confirmed that was her. The point is there's racists across all parts of the political spectrum. I actually think there's a lot of racism concentrated in the far left, because those are people, some of them who supported Bernie so hard that when people said Bernie's not going to get in, he doesn't have the same broad political spectrum appeal of Joe Biden, people were saying, well, black voters don't really know what they want, or they're misguided. And there was a lot of racism emanating from people on the
that
far
structural
left.
racism, that's not true. That's all a lie right there.
And so that individual racism manifesting in the thoughts and deeds of people on the far left who were disparaging the black voters in South Carolina, who voted for Joe Biden in that primary and helped elevate his chances of success within the Democratic primary race in 2019. That was evidence of some people who have a big talk about structural racism, but who, when on the ground, asked to listen to black voices and asked to listen.
That's you know who coined these terms? Do you know who coined these terms? Black people. Seriously, you're eye rolling on structural racism, Dav, and you're coming here. No,
Yeah, I'm not eye rolling on structural racism. I actually have a lot of things to say about structural racism, and I've done a lot on my shows to cover ways in which structural racism manifests itself in society, in American society and in other societies. So my eye rolling is reserved for your belittling and badgering rhetoric techniques that you've been employing today in our conversation.
Well,
my eye rolling is a
apologize.
passive-aggressive gesture.
Nope.
As a pushback against your lack of dialogue in this conversation.
You can push back because I'm very angry about this because I have these dialogues all the time with white people, and the first thing they say is, "Oh, it's not me. Can't possibly be me. I'm a good white person." So yes, I very much apologize to you because I respect you, but obviously I don't respect you enough, and I didn't act in a respectful way. But when it comes to issues around structural racism and oppression of black and brown people, like that's the work I do. That's the work I'm going to continue to do. And dismissing what makes America. You're from Canada, Paul. You're not in America. You're from Canada,
racism,
Paul. I love
is an
you.
International problem.
Racism and structural racism. There's nothing like structural racism in Canada in the same way in the United States. They do, but it's not the same system. It's like racism in England. If you're from India and you have a business, they don't think of it as an English business. They think of it as an Indian business. Okay, even if you were third generation member of the UK, but you still appear to be someone from Southeast Asia. The racism manifests differently in England than it does in the United States. The structural racism in England manifests differently because the cultures are different. So you can't. Yes, of course it's in Canada, but it is not the same thing. And I really have you dismissing structural racism as the problem here just baffles me because I know
You know a lot of things. Shh, for a second. You've been dominating the conversation.
Yep.
Good.
And I'll be quiet.
Okay. Your point of view so suggests to me a different version of American exceptionalism, whereby instead of saying America's exceptionally wonderful, you're insisting that America is exceptionally terrible and that other countries don't have similar problems with structural.
Oh, they do. I didn't say they didn't.
racism.
I said it's different.
It is different. But you've been dismissing people who don't live in America as not having an understanding of the degree to which structural racism can act as an independently moving cog that operates over and beyond the capacity of an individual racist person. It becomes something embedded in the system so that it doesn't even need an individual to keep it going. Structural racism is something that has inertia, that becomes so massive that it creates a normalcy bias around it that makes people struggle to even perceive it's there because it is just normal. So I understand this. Many of our audience members understand it as well. You are not the sole proprietor of the concept of structural racism, nor were you correctly understanding me when you said I was dismissing that structural racism is a significant factor in how America operates.
I'm keep talking. I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm ready to, I was being a bully and I'm going to be quiet and I'm let you continue. I think we probably, I just
said something though. Did you listen to it or did you just manage to stop talking for a second?
But I
do you want to respond to it?
I don't agree. I don't agree.
That's fine too.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't think someone from the UK or Canada who doesn't live here can even conceptualize what structural racism is like here, who could even conceptualize what racism is by living here. I just can't. I can't conceptualize what it's like in Canada. I can't conceptualize what it's like in Australia. I haven't even on the vacation, I couldn't conceptualize it. I haven't lived within
Would you agree
culture.
that Canada and Australia, we are all products of the British Empire and that
Sure.
the British Empire originated in Britain and that they may have exported a dynamic? So we may, in fact, be on a continuum where there is diversity, but we still can relate to each other.
100%. 100%. We can relate to each other, but, saying, okay, look, let's break this down, okay? So I have a good friend in England, and they're a conservative. But, they're probably actually more like a center-left American than what we would think of as a conservative in America. So when somebody says, well, I'm a such and such from somewhere else, where Paul says, Rev, I'm a liberal and I'm very aware of systemic racism and the issues that need to be changed. Calling every white person a racist is not only untrue, it's absurd. No, Paul, it's not. Whiteness is a form of oppression. Whiteness, your white skin by itself, is a form of oppression. And most white liberals freak out when you tell them that. They have a cow. I'm a good guy. I have black friends. I know black people. I have a black boss. I can't possibly be racist. Your culture is inherently racist. I'm not yelling. I'm being very calm here. This is the system that is in place in this country. It is designed to keep white people in power. It is designed to oppress people of color. And it is exactly what I said.
I think everybody would agree that we are marinated in a culture where there are some states of what is normal. So we're all marinated to think that, or immersed in a culture where some things that we accept as normal are actually built to perpetuate oppression. and to perpetuate systemic advantage for some and systemic disadvantage for others. So I don't think there's any among us who would disagree with you, but that's because we're not people in high office as well. So we're not worried about the political implications of alienating those white people who haven't yet recognized that we all exist on a continuum of racism. And that racism isn't the sole prerogative of white people either. I mean, white people are not the only people who have colonized others. There's just a strong history of very successful white colonization efforts, and people who have colonized others often don't want to let go of what they've won. So whether they do it subtly, whether they do it overtly, there's lots of ways in which people have sought to perpetuate the advantage that they have won for themselves and their ancestors through violent conquest. So violence becomes under the table. There's a lot of
what about white privilege?
Economic opportunity. Yes.
It exists.
What about it? Yes.
Exists.
Did you really think I would be denying that white privilege exists?
No, I'm just saying, but it seems like you're being dismissive of the fact that it is this culture of whiteness that is doing the damage. You're dismissing. You're trying to. You're trying
of your efforts to blend together your efforts to blend together two political parties to prevent people from being able to identify allies who can help mitigate.
Whoa, stop that word right there, allies. You can be an ally to black people? Yes or no?
Yes.
No. You can be a co-conspirator. You are the enemy. You're the oppressor. You can't be an ally in a war. It's called being a co-conspirator. You can fight the system that oppresses people of color, but you can't join them. You can't use your white privilege to fight privilege. You marching in the front of the parade because you want to join in, with black people in protesting something, that's not your place. Your place needs to be in the back of the parade. Your place needs to be taking out white privilege.
My place is in the front of the parade, freaking blocking, using my body to protect them. No. That's so mixed up.
No,
yes,
actually, Eleanor, you remember the women out west that were protecting
the
black bodies because they're white? Yeah, the folks there, the black people there, they didn't want that. They didn't ask for it. The white people stuck themselves in the front and said, we're going to protect you. They said, we don't need protected. Okay? That's the problem here, is that white people need to listen.
Yeah, I was.
White people don't need to.
You're great at that.
No, I had a bad night at it. Because something set me off, because this idea that white Americans cannot own up to the fact that they are the problem is a problem.
A ton of people in here have said that you get it. Then what happens, you have to act on it. You have to do something to change it. Or you're just sitting there with your white privilege.
You do something against the privilege and the power, which is what I do. It's the work that we do at the nonprofit that I work for every day. That's the work that we do. So, again, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to bully in here, but I'm going to try to be quiet. But, seriously, you cannot
don't have to be quiet. It's just a turn-taking skill thing. No,
it's not. I know how to do it. No, I was wrong. And Dav, you should probably tell me to get stuffed and never come back on a Thursday again, because I totally disrespected you. And this is a subject that makes me very angry, because I deal with it with white Americans every day that say, oh, no. I have black friends. Oh, my wife's black. I can't be the problem.
There's a lot of us who can admit to being in a system that is a problem and to having unconscious biases that we aren't even aware of ourselves. There's a test you can take online that measures your responses to photographs of black and white faces and then paired with negative or positive words, so you can find out from your own reaction time how conditioned you are to have a negative reaction to to black faces. So nobody's denying that systemic racism exists. Nobody's denying that white privilege exists. What I am keen for people like yourself to do is to not to not become an obstacle to progress by making assertions like allyship is not a thing, to act as if it's not possible to help advance.
Do you know where I got that? Wait, I'll be quiet. That's not, I didn't make that up. Okay.
I'm not saying you have to originate.
That's from black people that I work with. That's what they want. So it gets tricky when one black person says, okay, let's use the Latinx one again. I use Latinx. When I am with a Latino or a Latina and I say Latinx and they say, who the hell are you to use Latinx? That is not at all. You don't do that. It's Latino or Latina. And you know what I say now is that my Latinx friends prefer that I use that term. I will use Latino and Latina with you because you've asked me to. But on first introduction, I'm going to do what my friends have asked me to do. And in Chicago, that's a pretty heavily used term. It's a term that's coming here a lot. So there is a sticky wicket for white people. What do you do when one group of black people want you to do nothing, to get the hell out of the way and to let us lead? And the other group says, we want you to be an ally and all of what an allyship entails. Or a group that I'm pretty heavily involved with says, I would really prefer that you call it being a co-conspirator, and it does make sense because you have to fight the power. Being an ally is not the same thing as being a co-conspirator. Co-conspirators, remember, they're on the other side.
With, right? You're co-conspiring
You're conspiring with black people to take out white privilege, white society, white justice. Yes, 100%. That's what you're doing.
Yeah. So when you use the terminology of co-conspirator, even if you're being asked to do that by some black people you work with,
okay,
you're co-conspiring.
You make it sound like I don't, but okay.
To take out white justice, to take out white society.
Mm-hmm.
If there are two potential pathways forward, and one is change through legislature, through achieving political will and momentum and growing a majority of people who support your approach. And then so that's one approach.
Mm-hmm. Hasn't worked well for black people for a few years.
Sure, nothing's ever changed for black people. Everything's uniformly bad.
Oh, I said it hasn't worked well. I didn't say it didn't work.
Okay. Or there's another approach, which is violent overthrow. Maybe you've got a third approach you're thinking of, but it sounds...
I'm definitely not thinking violent overthrow. But it does sound... It hurts when you hear me talk like that.
Are you aspiring to achieve majority consensus? Are you aspiring to conscript enough people around to your point of view that you think it will be achievable through minority decisions?
I'm kind of okay with that.
Overthrow? Are you co-conspiring with a minority of people to overthrow the majority?
Yeah, I'm kind of conspiring for that. We had white presidents for 250 years. I think we could have black presidents for 250 years, equal it out a little bit. I'm for reparations. I don't know if there should be cash reparations or if they should be economic reparations. But yeah, I am. I think that we are at a place that is not at all trying very hard to end structural racism and oppression. We are at a place where we have a lot of lip service to communities of color.
The black farmers who will be receiving money from a fund that is specifically directed...
How many black farmers are there?
Well, the black farmers that there are have been discriminated against with relief funds going to white farmers. So
right.
It is.
So that's great. That's great. But that's not helping. That's not helping the 1 million black people in Chicago that live, not real well. Okay. So again, it's hard for white people to hear this.
Changes.
It's hard for white people to hear this, that white culture and white society is the problem, not the solution. We can't legislate away.
Sorry, now continue. When you legislate
we can't legislate away power. I don't see how you legislate it. And not at a quick enough rate. Like, people have been suffering, and they're going to continue to suffer because white people want to hold their privilege, because white people want to hold their power, because white people want to hold their wealth. I mean,
well, if you can't legislate away power, then why would the Koch brothers and the Mercers and the various white Christian billionaires in America, why would they work so hard to prevent Democrats from holding power? Why would they work so hard to prevent anybody legislating away their power?
No, John, I'm not. Actually, I'm American-centric. It's no different in LA. It's no different in New York.
If it's not possible, Rev, to legislate away power, why would Republicans work so hard to protect their power? What are they protecting it
Republicans
from?
Republicans are working hard to protect their zone of power, so that it doesn't go too far to the left. Republicans are perfectly happy if it slips center left, a little left. We can live with that. It'll swing back. They're going after the hard swings to the left, not the soft swings to the left. They're going after making sure that there's no radical legislation like why corporations in America are by law supposed to put the investors first at all costs except for doing something illegal, right? Wow, wouldn't that be great if they actually had some other fiduciary responsibility other than that? That's what the Kochs don't want, but the Democrats are never going to do that. The Democrats are never going to clean up Wall Street like that. It's not going to happen.
I see your rhetoric as such an enemy to progress. I see all of what you're talking about as so self-indulgent way to sabotage the ability of the Democrats to gain power.
You think this is coming from me, don't you?
I don't think you're the only person who's ever advocated for the overthrow of capitalism, Rev. Why would I think that? There's lots of people who've advocated for the overthrow.
I'm not talking about the overthrow of capitalism at this point.
There's lots of people who've deliberated about terminology to use with regards to people from Latin backgrounds. There's lots of people.
How many black-owned banks are there in Chicago?
There's lots of people who have done this. And thanks for your rhetorical questions about black-owned banks in Chicago, black-owned banks in Chicago.
That's a rhetorical question?
Yes.
It's a rhetorical question, really?
Because you're asking an Australian who isn't by any likelihood going to be able to supply you with an answer to how many black-owned banks there are in Chicago. But what I would like to say to you is that I have to go.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm so grateful to all the people in the comment section asking if they could just give a present to a guest.
You can, because I'll give them all to her. So there you go.
I appreciate that you feel very strongly about this, Rev, and I feel that you are in a rhetorical loop on the question, and that your rhetoric is not just unhelpful, it is actively sabotaging of American prospects to change the balance in favor of Black Americans and their interests. So I see what you're talking about as actively cycling America backwards by disempowering Democrats, by deterring people from voting for Democrats, by your failure to differentiate between Republicans and Democrats and insisting it's all part of white oppression. Yeah, we're going to definitely disagree,
because what it sounds like to me, what you just said is that I shouldn't be working towards Black people having power. And
I think you're working towards your rhetoric having power, and humans are like that. They get attached to ideas. I think you're sabotaging the ability of Black communities to gain power.
Wait. So now I'm using Black people to overthrow the government, or I'm talking about Black people having some special dispensation because they're a minority group to be able to control the levers of power that they've never been able to control, and that they should have a good influence in, because, they're a small percentage of the population that have, they're doing things in Australia right now with, or was it New Zealand? I think it's with New Zealand, where where they are given like X amount of this or that, food or resources or whatever, because they're indigenous and because they had been oppressed. There are a lot of systems that we could do. We could give all Black Americans free college in state universities.
How about we let the Black Americans decide what they want? Why are we white people doing that?
No, the Black Americans should be the ones to decide what they want to do. But I certainly am going to be here to speak against white Americans that aren't allowing these things to happen. So I know you want to go, Dev, so I don't want to keep you here.
No, it's okay. My husband thought something was being delivered, but it turns out something else was being delivered. So I don't have to turn off the internet just yet. I can.
I don't know, Sheldon. Go live in Englewood for a while and make that statement.
I don't think you have a mechanism. I think you are very good at identifying some problems, but your mechanism for addressing those problems is not sound, is not achievable. And the fact that you're fixated on describing these problems as if your proposed mechanism is achievable is
no, wait a minute. Is my proposed mechanism my GDP thing?
I'm not sure, because I asked you what you wanted to happen and you kind of ranted about something tangential to that.
No, look, I have not put one proposal to
well, that's the good. Then you're very small example.
The GDP thing is my example of the way that it would be groovy if we did it. I'm not proposing that I'm going to be the one that makes these decisions on how we do it. I'm saying communities, marginalized communities, have to have the right to be able to artificially have more power, just like we do. So wait a minute. So then would you be for or against affirmative action in this country?
Oh, lots of affirmative action.
Right. Well, that's all I'm talking about is affirmative action for marginalized communities in mass as it relates to the levers of power, to the ability to, legislate. So, for example, if I get one vote, maybe for the next 100 years, people of color get 3. I'm just throwing it out there.
There's fights that are going on right now. There's a lot of different states that are actively working to disenfranchise African-American voters, as Phil points out. They are not Democratic state legislatures doing that. They are Republican-controlled state legislatures. And the blurring of the boundaries between the two parties and this insistence of some overarching...
That's what you're stuck on, is the blurring.
Yeah, because it's counterproductive to political power. I'm involved in mechanisms that achieve progress, and you're not so much.
I look forward to when you come here and we can have this debate in other circles than a place with probably mostly white people, probably. Bernadette's here. And there's a
So I'm just looking at a comment in the comment section where Kenny TV is saying, Rev, you said you would do a Zoom to troubleshoot ideas to help make me bigger. Is he talking physically bigger, or is he talking profile bigger? I
don't remember, actually. I think he wants to be, I think, bye, I'm white and out. Yep. We hear that a lot. Kenny, just DM me, buddy. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. I think somebody like Bernadette knows what I'm talking about, and probably could speak to it much better than I can. I think we'll have, I will try to have some guests in the next intervening weeks that will speak to these issues that I don't speak eloquently about, because I'm a bloviated, fat, mean white man who doesn't know when to shut his mouth sometimes. But we'll bring some guests in here that will probably share my point of view in much more depth, that can speak to these ideas that I don't think are being represented here at all, and I think are being pushed back against, because I don't think that marginalized people see any difference between a conservative and a liberal. In fact, I can guarantee it.
You know what? Soft genocide was just perpetrated against people in marginalized communities by the Republican Party.
Yes.
By the actions of the Republican Party.
Yes.
And that
but they will tell you that they have said, I mean, like that. Okay, let me give you the analogy here. Yes, you know where I'm coming from. Thank you, Bernadette. So here's what Black people have said to me when you bring up the argument that you have this soft genocide against them. And here's what they'll say. When I walk out of my door, now I have a new thing that can kill me. Okay? Mm-hmm. But I already have cops that will kill me just because I'm Black. They will put their knee on my neck and kill me because I'm Black. Then I have politicians who are oriented towards the wealthy, and they will pollute my neighborhood because they can, because I'm Black. So now there's 3 ways they can be killed. I can go to 6 or 7, right? COVID to someone like that doesn't mean anything because it's just another thing that can kill them. They don't see a difference between Trump killing them or white structural racism killing them or corporate America dumping shit in their backyard killing them or racist policemen killing them. What they see is people killing them. That's not from me. That's been retold to me time after time, and I know Bernadette will agree with me.
There's a lot of things that are factors in an ongoing soft genocide. But that soft genocide was massively escalated in the context of the pandemic, that people employed in essential worker positions were more likely to die, that the reluctance of white privileged people who supported Trump to wear masks, the reluctance of many Trump supporters even now to get vaccinated and therefore contribute to achieving herd immunity and prevent death that was disproportionately affecting people in communities of color. Black Americans, Hispanic Americans are far more likely to die from COVID, just as Black mothers are far more likely to die in childbirth than white mothers. Mm-hmm. But the pace of life expectancy was actually going up for Black Americans, whereas for white Americans it was going down. There was a dip because one presumes there's mental health issues in white communities where they just watch Fox and blame other people for their problems. Black communities are often found by researchers to be psychologically healthier than people in disaffected white Republican communities. I say Republican, the researchers don't say that, but I will say white, rural, relatively isolated communities. There's psychological differences. And so even though access to medical care is a problem for many people of color, there were still some markers in which Black people were winning out over white people. The trajectory was up versus down.
Here's a typical white response that I'm going to put on the screen. Unfortunately, there's lots of races that are getting screwed over, religions, etc. Let me put it this way. All lives will matter when Black lives matter.
Yeah. Jacksonville in Mississippi, also a very predominantly Black population where they haven't had clean water for a few weeks now, and it's not getting a great deal of airtime. So when environmental justice issues are disregarded, when those things are disregarded, when opportunities are given to withhold empathy from Black people, then problems grow and creep and extend. So I agree with you, Rev, that all people are made more unsafe because of the ongoing disregard for the interests of Black Americans. And the interests of white Americans have actually been advanced in the wake of advancements for Black Americans. So the civil rights movement didn't just win rights for Black people, it helped improve the life and well-being of millions of Americans who were white. So saying there is no significant difference between the parties still, and that people of color don't feel any significantly more oppressed just because COVID was a pandemic that was purposefully exacerbated by the actions of a Republican president and his Republican cronies around the US.
Sheldon, color blindness is racist, dude. Being colorblind is racism, man. Okay? Like, that's like, you're just not getting it. Like, go into Black communities and have this dialogue. It's not like I don't go into Black communities and hear this. All right? This is not me making this shit up. We have one Black person in here, Bernadette, and she gets it. She agrees with it. So we're going to, because it's me saying it and not Bernadette, who's never come up here that I know of, but who's agreeing with me, we're going to dismiss her.
We're not going to dismiss her, and we're not dismissing everything you say just because I've disagreed with a lot of it.
No, it's fine that you disagree. I don't have a problem with that. But for Sheldon to say colorblindness is like, it's just not getting it. It's not getting it.
No, that's not everybody is at simultaneous arrival at all points of the journey to understanding about issues that afflict America.
But so he can jump on me and call me like Pol Pot, and it's fine. But I call him out on his not understanding of colorblind racism, as I'm the bad guy.
You're not the bad guy for pointing out that colorblind is not a useful measure for evaluating anti-racist success. Colorblindness is a defunct strategy which actually sabotages progress. Yes, we can agree on that, you and I, and Sheldon will probably get there. He probably hasn't listened to explanations of why colorblindness hurts, because when you're blind to color, you're blind to the problems that have been endemically inflicted on the Black population of America, and that have compounded over time. If you're colorblind, you're firming up your resolve to not notice these problems, and that's not what we need. We're still trying to recruit allies
and will address.
Who will?
You agree with that?
It doesn't automatically adjust. The progress is not linear. The arc of history is not straightforward. So Sheldon's just trying to probably combat what seems to be a resolve on your part to overthrow society. And I know you deny that that's your resolve, but it kind of seems to be.
Listen, hold on a second. My personal desire to overthrow society was
kind of feels like
way too represented tonight. Okay? I let that come out when I shouldn't have.
You did.
Huh?
You did.
Huh?
You did let it come out.
I did let it come out. And it was way overrepresented tonight. And, I can't do that because it isn't helpful. And I know
you have to hide it.
Yes.
Secret communist.
But the dialogue that I feel like we've had for the last 10 or 15 minutes is much more productive than it was for the first hour and a half where I was a bloviated dickwad. So
somebody already said in the comments section that they applaud self-deprecating humor on your part.
And trying to apologize,
yeah, I accept it. I accept your apology.
No, I appreciate it because I really was like, I don't know what the hell was wrong with me. Other than, you know what? I don't want to come up with an excuse. It was wrong. But
look, Sheldon says that it's a poor choice of word. He retracts colorblind.
Yeah. And Sheldon and I have talked before. We like each other. I mean, he's, I guess, was it on Haps? It had to be on Haps because I've seen him. It couldn't have been Periscope. Ask Dr. C to join next week. Oh, there you go. There you go. Wow. That would be great. That would be great. Dr. C would be great. You're right, Bernadette. That's part of the problem with having a program. It's a problem that you run into around any issues when you're the white person, right? I mean, Eleanor says it like, why don't you let black people figure that out? Yeah, you're right. But I'm talking to white people about what their problem is, not specifically talking to Paul, not specifically addressing this to black people. It is more like the idea of the counterinsurgency, the co-conspirator, which is it's our responsibility to understand it. It's not the responsibility of a black person to tell us why we're racist. It's our responsibility to tell each other.
Of course, it's our responsibility. We built the system. We need to break it down.
Exactly. We need to.
We broke it.
What?
We need
Eleanor,
to fix
we need
it.
to what? What did you say before that?
Break it down.
Break. Oh, that's almost like burning it down. Stop.
I'm all about burning it down. Come on.
No, I 100%, went sideways there tonight, and because I'm very passionate about the fact that the communities that I have been in and out of in Chicago, and you said about, what the average lifespan of a North Sider like me is 90. The average lifespan of a South or West Sider black person is 65 in Chicago.
And that will have fallen because with COVID, the number of black Americans who died meant that black life expectancy has fallen.
Yeah, it'll get worse. So,
but the trajectory was actually increasing previously to the pandemic.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
Relative to the trajectory of white life expectancy, which was slightly plateauing and decreasing, in large part because of the deaths of despair, the pattern of early deaths of middle-aged white people in communities where they were increasingly taking drugs, committing suicide by one way or the other. Right. And I'm imagining that white despair is very linked to the
God was very segregated, hugely segregated
worldview perpetuated by conservative media. So that type of aggrieved entitlement is not conducive to long life.
And I would say too that even though I was a train without a track, the point of view that you have is 100% valid. I'm not saying it's not valid. I'm not going to validate my point of view, but I don't look at it again as a issue between the parties. I look at it as an issue between white Americans, one who is comfortable in their racism and one who isn't.
And I see the utilitarian value of that perspective as being worse than useless, because there's a utility to understanding racism. There's a utility to understanding the problems that beset America in a broad sense. But if you then sabotage the political will to oppose the party where racism is concentrated, it's not limited to, but it is concentrated in the Republican Party. So Democrats are not absolved from racism. There are still racist motivations and power protection rackets in the Democratic Party for sure. But racism and concentration of wealthy white power is concentrated in the Republican Party. And if you detract from that, if you say things to weaken people's conviction to vote out Republicans, then you are perpetuating the problem.
Do we know the political affiliations of the top 15 wealthiest Americans? I would be shocked if they were Republicans in the majority. In fact, I think that probably isn't true.
Well, I don't associate wealth with being a racist white Christian billionaire. I denounce the racist white Christian billionaires who work to overthrow democracy in America. I don't think that Bill Gates is absolved from criticism. I don't think that Jeff Bezos is absolved from criticism. But I don't think they are funding the overthrow of American democracy as much.
Right, but that's where we're different right now. that is so that is clear.
Yeah, you
and I'm
think that
not.
wealth
You're
is
talking
inherently
about the
evil
fascism right
because
now.
you're a
I'm
little
not talking about
communist.
the fascism.
I know.
Which I'm 100% on your side with the
You want to
fascism. I'm
divide
right
up
there.
the GDP amongst everybody in America as
Well, that's
reparations.
me. That's me. Yes,
Yeah,
I
that's
would.
you.
I'm fine with that. Me personally, but that's not my politics. That was just me giving out my personal, dream. Let's say my politics are pretty hard left. I think that the post office is socialism. The fire department is socialism. The police department is socialism. The welfare office is socialism. Almost every government service is socialism. The only people that live in a capitalist, so the majority of Americans live under capitalism, but the 1%, they live under socialism. They don't pay any real taxes. They don't. They have everything from a government standpoint is given to them. They don't have any. There's nothing detrimental. They kind of have a bit of a free ride. So,
And they get the tax breaks from the Republican Party. And we don't
I don't
blur the
think the
lines.
Democrats have eliminated tax breaks or going to a simplified tax system. I don't think they've ever tried to
People
make
who
it
introduced
fair.
the massive tax break for wealthy people
I do.
was the
Donald
Republican
Trump.
Party in 2018.
Right.
Very decisively, very conclusively, very.
I get that. But it's not. The Democrats aren't, flipping the script. Usually, they never completely unravel it. It just keeps snowballing. I mean, the thing is, oh, why did your comic get blocked there? That's not good. It's probably just. Hold on. See.
I gotta go.
What does it have to do with Asians oppressing Asians? Have to do anything with white people oppressing black people in America, Sheldon? What are those?
I think he's trying to combat. While he types his own explanation, I will say that he might be trying to undermine your rhetoric that says whiteness is inherently oppressive and wealth is inherently oppressive, because he probably doesn't want you taking American exceptionalism in that flip state of America is so exceptionally bad that other people can't really discuss it with us and we can't hope to reform it. It has to be burned. So Sheldon's operating defensively to try and point out that white people are not the only dispensers of colonialist oppression.
Yeah, but see, again, Americans we left the colonialists 250 years ago.
Colonialism endures.
I get it. But this is not England. This is not Australia. It is very different here. The way that our government functions is very different. This is a democratic republic with a basically there's no other government in the world like this government. No, when the Americans invade a country and take over that country, they don't install a democratic republic with three branches of government. They put in a parliamentary democracy. That's what is installed. This is a very unique place. Not all places are unique, but this is a very unique place politically. And
But if you're saying that because you want to say it's uniquely politically bad, then you're just
no.
You just have a different permutation of American exceptionalism.
No, I see.
Than the people who try and say America's beyond criticism.
Yeah, see, I just think that if you ask that question to the millions and millions marginalized black and brown people in this country, I just don't think they're going to agree with your side, Dev. I don't think they're going to agree with you at all.
What's my side?
Your side is trying to say that white privilege and white supremacy aren't almost innate in the individual. You're trying to say that it's not whiteness. The whiteness in this definition here, our history and culture have allowed privileges associated with whiteness and disadvantages associated with color.
I'm going to interrupt your straw man. I am not your straw man. I am not somebody denying that white privilege and white supremacy play a role, and that role is not dispersed across American society. So no straw man, not me, not today.
Okay, so I mean, I think we should have this dialogue with, let this dialogue happen with people of color. I'll put it together. I'll see what I can do and let them talk about structural racism and whiteness. And,
you and I are both in complete agreement that structural racism is a thing and that it oppresses people of color in ways that many white people haven't even begun to consider. So we're in agreement on that. Difference was in I denounce what I see you as doing, which is I see you as blurring the distinctions between the Democratic and the Republican Party, which I think diminishes political will to vote out Republicans and therefore to stop some of the people in power who have sought to disenfranchise Black Americans, who right now are massively working to disenfranchise Black Americans, take power away from them, take voting power away from them, and therefore take their ability to vote for better access to clean water, for the lead paint being removed from their houses and not just from the houses of white people in white neighborhoods.
Michigan is generally considered a blue state. Flint, didn't get fixed after the Republican governor went away. Still not fixed.
No.
Still not
because
fixed.
They paid millions and millions of dollars to change, to criminally change their water supply from, from the lake to the river.
No, what happened was basically there was a water source, probably the lake, and there was some expense that had to be incurred. There was some expense that had to be incurred that they didn't want to pay. So they're like, well, let's just divert the river water to them. It's water. It's fine. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing the treatment plants or whatever, well, there's actually
there was a high bacterial content in there was a high bacterial content in the river. So the additives they had to add to reduce the bacterial content of the water from the river was corrosive and corroded
the lead pipe.
The lead and the pipes were old, but that gave rise to a very high degree of lead in the blood of the people living.
But my point is, under what's her name, seriously, they could have solved that since it became a crisis. What's it been, 8 years? I don't know how long it's been. They could have replaced every freaking lead pipe in that whole city 3 times over by now, and they didn't do it. That will tell you, to my mind, that there's still a problem with liberal governments who aren't taking care of marginalized people. A big problem.
Look at Denver. You have a Democratic mayor and freaking destroying homeless people. He's not helping them at all. And he used to be homeless. He ran on helping the homeless. He's made homelessness illegal. How is that even a thing? How do you lose your home and then you get arrested because you lost your fucking home? What is wrong with humanity?
Yeah, so, I mean, I just think you and I have just a fundamental... Yes, I'm a bloviated ass sometimes who has... you are so beautiful, Rev. Hey, Desiree, I love you too. You probably haven't been in here, though. You still might not love me. No, I know you will. I think you and I do have a fundamental difference, which is we see whiteness differently.
I think you have a rationale that excuses you from pursuing solutions.
Again, why am I not?
Because you're confounding the problem. So instead of the problem being individuals who act in bad faith, who act to hurt African American people and disempower them. And
No. That's wrong. It needs to stop. But that's not the only problem. You're stuck and fixated on the Trump right-wing genocide going after people right now. I'm fixated on the long
I'm looking
problem.
at some some big threats, yes.
Yes.
But I have also
I'm
said
looking
that
at the long
racism
threat.
is not limited to the Republican Party. I have said racism is concentrated in the Republican Party. So you can bring up all sorts of incidents of Democrats acting in a way that hasn't been sufficiently effective or sufficiently caring about the plight of Black Americans. And I'll say none of that contradicts my premise of racism is concentrated in the Republican Party. And when you argue...
No, I will disagree. I will disagree.
Yeah.
Racism is endemic in white America.
Yeah. And
across
again,
the board.
Saying that racism is concentrated in the Republican Party does not contradict a stance that says racism is endemic. It can be endemic and prevalent.
That's fine. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I'm just saying you're concentrating on the now, and I'm concentrating on...
I'm not, because I also want things to be better in the future, and I also want to make progress.
I'm saying tonight you have been concentrating on Trump and fascism and those issues around racism, and I haven't been focusing on that.
I'm not just talking about Trump. I think since Ronald Reagan, the acceleration of concentrated racism in the Republican Party, since after the Civil Rights Act, that's been a thing. And when you don't acknowledge the thing, you can't respond effectively to the thing.
I don't know. I really
it diminishes your ability to respond effectively to the thing. So that's my... How is this guy still not blocked, dude?
Who?
Boston Tea Party. He's a massive racist, but he's applauding you.
Oh, well, let's... yeah, I know why. Okay, I get it. Yeah. He's just trying to get at He's trying to get at you. Let's see if I can mute him. There you go.
He's in Twitter, so you're not going to actually be able to. You have to go to Twitter.
Yeah, I have to go into Periscope or something.
Yeah, because I blocked him on... You can block him on Twitter and play.
Yeah, let me try and block him. What is he? Boston Tea Party. No, I really think that the...
Oh, yeah. Sheldon's referencing a good article about some of the trajectory of American politics since Reagan. I mean, Reagan was very racist. I saw his daughter said...
Of course he was.
Oh, I cried when I heard on tape that my father had referred to African diplomats as people from African nations as being monkeys. That he was very racist, and he used propaganda to try and mischaracterize Black Americans as welfare cheats and welfare frauds, and set up a dynamic in America that has for a long time led to poor white people voting against their own self-interests, because they will perish from lack of access to Medicaid, but still vote for people who refuse federal help to expand Medicaid because they don't want their tax dollars going to Black people or Mexican people. And that's how fervently self-sabotaging of white interests it is to be racist in America. Because, I mean, the point you made before, justice, when there is injustice for some, there is injustice for all. It's true. And racism is a double-edged sword that makes some people feel superior. It gratifies them emotionally, even as it impoverishes them.
It's called Jim Crow South. You know, they made the white people think that they were slightly better than the Black people, and that was all they needed. And that's kind of all they need now. You know, that's the way the Republican Party gets away with what they get away with.
Yeah. So don't call me as limited to focusing on Trump, because I'm not.
No.
I'm very interested in the broader swathe of American society and the pattern of history from Reagan going forwards. My understanding of American politics and society is definitely not as developed as someone who's actually lived in the country. But don't discredit my work.
No. I was only specifically speaking to tonight. I wasn't hearing you talk about or necessarily agreeing with some of the things that you probably would agree with, other than my, misbehavior. But
I think you're finding an excuse to disagree with what I've said tonight.
No. I'm giving you my perspective. All I was hearing was what I hear a lot from you almost all the time, which I always, which I agree with, and which is what we talk about, which is all the problems that the Republicans and Trump have done and what we need to do. But
Well,
there
the
you go,
imminent
Greg
threat,
Johnson.
the
This
imminent
country
threat
was
from
built of
Republicans
racism,
now.
3/5 compromise. That is what I'm talking about. That's what you can't undo with an amendment. That's when you need to write a brand new constitution that directly acknowledges that 3/5 statement is actually gone from the Constitution, that the 14th Amendment actually doesn't, because we still have slavery in prisons here. We haven't talked about the industrial prison complex that directly enslaves Black people for profit in this country. And that slavery was allowed to continue by
With the
this
provision that you
system
can use the
of
enslaved
prison.
labor of
Yes,
incarcerated people. Yes.
right,
Yes.
right.
We
So
will
no,
talk.
Dev, listen, you are my political like hero mentor, like your ability and understanding of everything is, it's a billion years ahead of mine. And what I painted myself into the corner of was that I went a little correct. The racism is tied to the economics in this country. Under Republican leadership, especially the division of race and the suppression of blacks, kept the population focused on racism while the greed flourished. Oh man, there's a
Well,
lot there to unpack, Sheldon, but I'm
I
not
I
going to
can
try
do
to
it
unpack.
easily. It's that same famous quote that says you can get the votes of the most impoverished white person provided you tell him he's superior to someone
Right.
from a different demographic group. That's an easy one. And yes, that does allow greed to proliferate when you make the issue a culture war of saying, don't worry, we're not going to let affirmative action take away your status or privilege. And people who are conservative, white, and Christian are more likely to believe that they are being discriminated against as white people. They are more likely to believe that Black people are being unfairly advantaged. And that belief, if you find it in someone, is a big predictor on how they will vote. The Republican Party is the outlet for people who feel they have a grievance
Well, Clinton,
against Black people because they feel that they are discriminated against.
Joe Biden wasn't
And
really
that's
friendly
not
with,
limited to the Republican Party. I know there are also white Democrats who also would still
like Bill
oppose on
Clinton.
some level affirmative action. Well, you say Bill Clinton, and I know there was the crime bill,
And there was also
which
the work that they did where they went in that direction of against they took away a lot of the things that we used to call welfare. For they greatly reduce access to systems, to resources, to money, as appeasement,
really,
for
because
some other
from what I heard,
political things.
Hillary Clinton in 1992 was generating a proposal for universal health care.
Yeah, but she wasn't the president.
No,
She didn't
but
sign the bills that oppressed
no,
Black
and the
people.
bill didn't pass, but she was
Right,
working on
right,
that legislation.
right. Rev, you are correct with the prison system and Black people being incarcerated. As the
Frankly, I love
white
that.
plight of slavery, New Age oppression, that's what I gathered from your statement. No, DavKat would agree with that, I think, probably.
I
Yeah.
will. I said it.
Right. Dav 2024, make America great again. Ooh.
No, he
Yeah.
said, "Make America think again."
again.
Oh, think. Sorry, that was just my brain filling it in. When feelings of superiority instilled in the white, oh, I know where he's going to go here. Bill Clinton
I'm
was.
going to blow everybody kisses and go have lunch. Mwah. Thank you. Thank you, Rev. I know we were getting a little bit off the rails with our conversational dynamic earlier, but I appreciate your efforts to put it back on track. And I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect either, so I'll put that out there.
Well,
Sometimes,
let's. Will we see you next week?
yeah.
Well, hold on. Again, like, just I appreciate you so much, and I feel terrible because, yeah, I didn't.
No, you don't have to feel terrible. I can hold my own. So.
I know you can. But you're my friend, and I appreciate it.
All right. Well, take care, everybody. Thank you, Indoor Smokers. Thank you, Sheldon, Bernadette.
Holy crap! It's 11:30.
Yeah,
Oh my
Frank.
God. Okay.
Thank you for your admonitions. No, your encouragement to run for office. I know
Oh yeah.
it's a turn of phrase, and that someone not born in America can't be president, even if they migrate. Although I don't hold the Constitution to be static, that's why there are amendments, and there can be additional amendments. And have I thanked everybody? Bernadette, Sheldon, Molly. Molly's there too. Thank you, Molly. Rose, everybody, lovely to see you all, and take care. I will see you on this show next Thursday.
And what's your show like? I've seen you broadcasting. Are you broadcasting at a consistent time right now?
Not that consistent.
Not that consistent? Well, do me a favor when you broadcast, like shoot me a WhatsApp thing and I'll tweet it out there and stuff for you, okay? Because
Awesome.
we need lots of people following you. I want to do everything I can to make that happen. So,
Thanks for having.
all right, Dev.
Take care, everybody.
You take care too. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Oh, just hit exit at the bottom.
There we go.
Oh, yep. See you later. You're here, but you're fine. You can just close your browser. She's awesome. She's amazing. She's probably the best thing that that you can find on this platform. Oh, there you go. DavKat's link tree there. So, hey, Anna, what's up? You, hi. If anybody wants to come up and say hi, we're not going to debrief on this, but feel free. And to be continued, says Eugene. But let me know real quick, because otherwise I'm going to jump, and we will be here tomorrow with. Oh yeah! Oh my gosh, you guys, seriously. Let me find my feed. You really need to be here tomorrow because Olivia Robinson, who has a app. So this isn't the first app of its kind, but is an app to help promote Black-owned businesses, and also she's got a little twist on it that I'm going to let her talk about with mobile, and she calls it mobile businesses. So in a lot of Black communities here in the U.S. anyway. Thank you, Sheldon. In the U.S., she's amazing. Thank you, Rose. In the U.S., I'm so happy to see you, Anna. I haven't seen you for a few days. She calls it mobile because what she's doing is there are a lot of Black businesses that don't have a physical location, or they change locations, or they cook food and they do these different things. So she's trying to make these type of businesses available. She's trying to increase Black buying power. The Black buying power, whatever it's at about 1.5 trillion, which is a little smaller than the Canadian economy. So there's a lot of Black money out there, but Black businesses, only 2%. I believe the number is only 2% of small businesses are Black-owned businesses. It's a really tiny number. So if we can get that up, there's definitely apps out there that are doing this. She's not doing anything new, but she does have a new twist with this mobile idea, and she's then going to, anyway, I'm gonna let her explain it. Just please come tomorrow night and support Olivia Robinson. There are just an amazing amount of guests that are going to be coming in the upcoming weeks that I've been connecting with, that I would like you guys to support. Despite my tantrum, I guess, today, despite that, I'm working really, really hard to bring people to this platform that wouldn't normally get the chance. And then, look, everybody, before you run, Eleanor, put your Cash App stuff in there, please. No? You want to? Anyway, if you just DM me if you want to see if we can help figure out some ways to help Eleanor out. Yeah, thanks, Eleanor. I mean Bernadette. But anyway, yeah, please support Olivia. She's amazing. It'll be great, and I appreciate all of you. So I will see you tomorrow, and peace be with you, and namaste.